Hi, Chris. Thanks for joining me today.
Good to be here.
So to kick things off, Chris, how did you get into procurement?
It was a long time ago, a long time ago. I used to work in a hospital in Chichester. So I'd fallen into a role there, working in what was known as an equipment library. And I was kind of just dossing about it. So I needed to do something. And I spoke to a guy called Andrew Boxall, who was the head of procurement at the time, because he had a role advertised. I was nowhere near meeting the criteria. But I had a chat with him, and I remember he had a shelf in his office, and he had lined up all of the SIPS magazines, like there from I don't know, 5-6 years or something. And so he just lent me quite a few. And so I learned a bit about it. Thought it was pretty good. And then a role came up at a place called Solent Supplies. So this was mid to late noughties. And that was run by a guy called Alan Hoskins. So this is an NHS collaborative procurement place, which did the buying for Portsmouth hospitals mainly, and Isle of Wight as well. And there was a role. I went for it, totally underqualified, nothing on my CV apart from I worked in a hospital and knew what they were buying. And I got an interview, surprised, went for it. It was more a learning curve for me, but it was really interesting. And thankfully, Alan and his team kind of called me up and said, actually, we're creating some junior roles. Would you be interested? And so then applied for that and got the role and fell into procurement, as most people end up doing. And then they were great there. Fantastic place. They had a breadth of really experienced people as well as some junior people as well. They got you to start doing self-educating SIPs. So went through the qualifications there, and then however many years later it is, 15, 16 years later, here I am.
Fast tracking for now, you're now head of procurement at Vitality. Do you want to give us a bit of an overview of the kind of makeup of your procurement function, the roles, and how it's all broken down and how you've split the function up?
Yeah, of course, James. So we've got we're the sourcing and supply management team within Vitality. There's 10 of us. I head up that function. So we have responsibility for at least 170 million pounds worth of spend. But actually, when you look at some of the clinical elements we do as well, it can go up to about 300 million, direct and indirect. That team we've got a few offices in Vitality: Stockport, London, Croydon and Bournemouth. The majority of our team is in Bournemouth, normally, obviously under different circumstances, and then one of our teams up in London as well. And we have some front kind of customer facing sourcing members who look after different categories, so clinical, marketing, IT, digital, and then someone who thankfully looks after the rest, property and facilities, document management, operations. And then we have a bit of a back office as well, so looking after supplier risk, contract management and the administration of that, and also renewals, reviews, supplier management, supporting with putting in place 360s, the management, the segmentation of that, and our whole operations function as well. So 10 people across the board, fantastic team, do some great stuff. And then we're measured on certain objectives. We do end to end. So we do it from business idea and inception and get involved with business cases all the way through to supplier termination and everything in between, which I'm really pleased about. I don't think we quite have enough resource to dedicate as much time as I'd like to each of the areas. But we work in close conjunction with the business to support on their supplier management and getting most value out of their suppliers and bringing on board the best new suppliers too.
It's been an interesting couple of years, Chris, as I'm sure you're no doubt aware. What are some of the challenges you and the team are currently facing at the moment?
It's been a very interesting 2 years, hasn't it, for everybody? Firstly, adapting to not being in an office anymore, to working from home, and also at the same time, I suppose back in March, April 2020, we were all starting to have to really look at all of our service providers and whether they would be able to continue delivering services for Vitality. So we did a huge piece of work back then to look at business resiliency, make sure we had supply contingency plans in place. And unfortunately, we did have 2 or 3 that did, stop trading, just because of the way they delivered services. to customers. It just wasn't going to work out in the pandemic. We also had a load of others who evolved tremendously, like overnight, as well as what Vitality did as well. I mean, Vitality, if people know it, offers a lot of partners and rewards to incentivize you to live healthier lives by going and doing steps or cycle or run, James. So it goes and does that. But we used to give away cinema tickets, still do, but clearly cinemas was shut, so it didn't work. So it moved to, instead of doing cinema tickets, you had at-home movies. Instead of going to your local coffee shop to go to get a Cafe Nero, you get coffee at home and get beans delivered. So things changed quite a bit. And we had to be involved with that. And I think from that, we've been a lot hotter on contingency plans, exit plans, business continuity, business resiliency, disaster recovery. It's been a huge focus just to make sure. I mean, thankfully, we're a financial services organization. A lot of service providers, a lot of them have been able to carry on working. I mean, it must be totally different in other areas where things have stopped, supply chains have come to a grinding halt. Thankfully, we didn't have too much of that happening. And then it's just been adapting to the way of working. Sourcing is all about engagement. You fight so much to get in front of the right stakeholders, the right people, to influence their decisions, to show what value you can have. So doing that virtually is a bit tricky. I mean, thankfully, we've got an established team, established people, established relationships. But we've just got to keep that up. And so it's fine when you pass someone in a corridor and speak to them for a bit and they go, oh, I need to talk to you. We've got some money, we've got this business case approved. That's not happening so much. So it's just about having those Teams, Zoom, Skype calls to keep up interactions, to keep your face out there, to keep up the engagement of the team so that we're adding value at the earliest possible opportunity. And I think that's good because we actually have engagement stats that we report on a monthly basis. And we've seen those skyrocket now the pandemic, which is mad because they shouldn't go hand in hand, but they have, which I'm really pleased about.
What are you most passionate about when it comes to procurement at the moment?
I think the hot topic for everybody seems to be, and rightly so, sustainability. But I'm pretty sure lots of people have spoken about that numerous times. So I wasn't going to spend a huge amount of time on it, even though clearly it's a hugely important focus, and we are doing a lot, reviewing our supply chains, looking at who's putting sustainable practices in place and bringing them along with us on our journey and mission to be carbon neutral in the next few years, and then to be net zero by 2050. My piece is more about shared value. To those who know Vitality, we talk about shared value quite a lot, but I kind of believed in this before I joined Vitality. It just happened to marry up quite nicely, in that shared value being that both parties get something out of it. So for Vitality, that means we incentivize healthier behaviors from our customers. The customers lead healthier lives. They therefore claim less, and therefore, then we can reduce premiums. It's that cycle. I said that very simplistically. For sourcing and suppliers, it's about making sure that the benefits on both sides. Now, some may say, well, obviously there's a benefit. You get a service, they get paid. What do you want? But you want to incentivize further in service improvement, performance improvement, enhancements. And I think we've tried to put in a lot of contracts over the past few years that drives that performance. So I'm not talking about just having service credits and penalization, because it's more about having that carrot as well as the stick. So what we try and do is we try and bonus and incentivize our suppliers by reaching certain targets. And there's a few of them out there, specifically in the clinical space, who've been fantastic, who then, go and speak to their customer service teams to try and reduce, say, the amount of complaints, to improve their net promoter score that we use for feedback, to look at their clinical outcomes. And they're doing all these things because we've set these targets. And yes, they get financially rewarded for them, but also they're going to be better for the customer and better for Vitality too. And then they can use that to then work with other customers too. So that's the key thing that I like to do. It's not about just bringing on board the right providers or suppliers. It's about then making sure that you've got a contract that works for both parties, that you both keep looking at and working at and wanting to improve upon to continually deliver a better service. And for some areas, it won't work. But I think for quite a few it will, and that's what I'm passionate about, because then it keeps both parties kind of focusing on what they can do to improve.
Right, thanks, Chris. What would you say are some of the kind of key focus areas for procurement at the moment? What are they, and what indeed should they be, do you think?
I'm going to have to talk about sustainability now. So clearly it's a massive focus area. It's everywhere, isn't it? ESG, green, all the different names that it comes under. I think it's going to be hugely important. I think customers or the general public have a significant more focus on this than they have done previously, and rightly so, because it's out there. And I think we need to make sure that we're doing all that we can to be sustainable. We've got large projects underway of Vitality to reduce the amount of print we have. We know that other organisations out there have reduced it significantly, and we want to be in the same boat. There's not the requirement anymore, but it means a lot of digital investment to make sure that you've got the right communication channels, the right contact details to be able to send communications digitally where possible. But it's definitely the right thing to do. So we've got to act as a bit of an enabler there. And incentivizing, that's the tricky thing. How do you incentivize a print management provider to print less? But that, thankfully, most print management companies are not just printers anymore. They're kind of they're communications partners. So they are looking, because they can see that the market's turning. And obviously everyone's seen it with what's happening with newspaper and print. So therefore that's reducing significantly. And so we'd hope to just kind of work with them moving forward. So I think that's a key thing. And then also just that continuation of the supply chain resiliency. Like I say, in financial services, it's not a huge issue, as it will be in other sectors and other markets, but we still need to make sure that we've got that resiliency in place in case anything does change in the future or there are any more fluctuations in the market.
And I'd love to hear, when you're looking to bring new talent into your team, your procurement team, what do you look for when you're going through the hiring process in individuals?
This is interesting and timely, and we probably need to have a conversation at some point because but we've actually got 2 vacancies at the moment. We've got a couple of people unfortunately leaving the team, both fantastic people who it's going to be a great loss to. One's retiring and one's moving on to new ventures, actually moving outside of sourcing and going into working into IT where they had done previously. And I'm really pleased with both of them because it's the right decision for them at this moment in time. But it means we're looking for people to come on board at the moment. What are we looking for? So I'm always looking for people to come in with the right personality to fit with the team. I think we're a really good team, and even though we have been in the office, not recently, not in the last couple of months, whenever the announcement was made, but before that we were in, and I think there's a good balance in the team, a good camaraderie, and I really enjoy that, and I want someone to come in and enjoy that too. But also, clearly, I need someone who's got the right level of expertise and to be able to do that. Experience is an interesting one for me because I like to think that experience is great, but you should always give people opportunities maybe if they don't have that. And maybe that's because that's how I got into procurement in the first place. I always go through every CV that comes in, regardless if it doesn't say sourcing at the top or procurement at the top, or whether it's half a page rather than 10 pages, just to see if there's something there that sparks a bit of interest, something that potentially, and I know for maybe not for senior roles, but certainly for the middle of the road or junior roles, I'll have conversations with a lot of people just to find out a little bit more rather than what's on paper, to see if there's something that just stands out. I suppose I'm always hoping to find that gem that it might not be perfect on paper and compared to what you're comparing it with, but actually they're going to be perfect fit because they've got the right soft skills. Because it's about being a great communicator. It's about influencing and engaging with stakeholders, and you don't necessarily have to be the best negotiator, although clearly it helps. But I know there's some people in our team, and they won't be worried about me saying this, who despise negotiation, and some people absolutely love it. So it's not the be all and end all. I think it's about fairness, communication, and then having a patience, I suppose, with certain stakeholders to move forward. But if you've got a good variety of soft skills to come on board and you like a challenge, certainly Vitality is a massive challenge. then come on board.
I guess this might tie in quite nicely, Chris. What inspires you as a procurement leader, and for someone watching, why might they want to come and work for you?
What inspires me? I like to make a difference. It's always been the thing. I don't want to get to the end of the day and feel that, or the end of the week, or the end of the month, and feel like I haven't actually contributed to something. I think the positive, and this is the reason why I've been at Vitality 6 years, 4 months, longest I've ever been in a role. Normally get to 3 years, although if you look at my LinkedIn or CV, there's a couple where they only lasted about 18 months, but it's only because there was new opportunities. It wasn't anything against that role at the time. It's always a challenge. I can't believe I've been at Vitality 6 years. It's a fantastic challenge, and that you get involved with some massive projects that are going to change things. They're going to be better for customers and members. It means they're going to be able to have access to care quicker. It means that we're going to promote the brand better. It means that our systems are going to work better. And we are heavily involved with this. And I like that. And that makes a big difference to me. I've been in roles in the past where you feel that actually it doesn't make a difference if you do this piece of work or not. I think that makes a big difference to Vitality. And I think people are commended and rewarded for that. What inspires me is I love to see great leadership. I love to see people challenging the status quo, and that happens here at Vitality. I like to see people doing things differently. I love it when you're attending a governance forum or a committee, and someone asks a question that you'd never even think of or dream of, but actually you're like, where did that come from? That's great. I want to learn from that, and I love to learn from colleagues. Like, thankfully I've had fantastic amount of experience while I've been here to work with some senior colleagues in the business who have been able to take aspects of what they say and what they do and try and incorporate them into my own style and what I do going forward. He won't mind me saying this, but our Chief Healthcare and Medical Officer, Ali Hassan, has been a great influence. He's very challenging of suppliers and third parties, but honest and in a positive way, because he wants to drive the right behaviours and the right performance. And I've been able to incorporate some of that into what I do too. And it's great to see that we've both kind of progressed and grown our roles in the time that we've been here at Vitality.
What's been the biggest lesson you've learned in your procurement career so far?
There was a few early on, some interesting ones. The one I like, which I remember from, I mean, this is a long time ago. I'll do a later one, but I'll do an earlier one first. We went to, when I was at Solent Supplies, so which did the procurement for Portsmouth hospitals, we had an away day, I think at a local hotel or something. This is based over at Hedge-End, and it was a negotiation training course. And so you had tutors come in and talk about it to begin with, and then you actually had to do role play. And obviously everyone despises role play, don't they? And then when you get into it, it's actually really good. And I got faced up against the director, the leader of it all, Alan Hoskins. And I was the most junior person doing it at the time. So it's like, you've got to be joking me. And he stayed silent the entire way through our negotiation as I was just trying to get him to say something. And in the 5 minutes he stayed silent, I think I'd reduced what I was, I'd increased my offer or reduced whatever I was selling it for by such a significant amount. And he just said at the end, he'd done nothing. He'd done absolutely nothing. And so that lesson of just the power of silence, I just thought was absolutely just amazing. And it stuck with me for so long, because everyone wants to fill that void or say something, and sometimes you just don't need to, because someone else will, and they'll say something that will give you that piece of information that you can use to go forward. Now, clearly that's great in negotiations. I think more experience is just is not being too quick to react to things. Some people get quite offended by the way that people go about things, or get frustrated or worried about certain things that happen. And I think you've just got to take into, everyone's a human being. I hope everyone's working so that they can live a fantastic life outside. So actually just take a moment, think about it and think, actually, if they're being like that, what is our rationale for that? What pressure's on them to make that call or make that decision? And then don't be offended, because it's not about you, it's not against you. And then what can you do to assist them or help them or do something? Because we've all been in positions where we've got to an end of a project and then something's gone horribly wrong and you think it's the end of the world, and it's not, because everything gets sorted and fixed in the end. So it's just always just trying to have that pragmatic view about things, that you can get it fixed, you can get it sorted, it'll all be fine in the end. Just take a step back, think about what you're doing, think about how you're going to tackle that problem and move forward.
I think those are two really good lessons, and I've certainly had a few early career situations where those have been kind of really hammered home, particularly with the power of silence. I remember early on sitting across from a potential client and having a negotiation. He was a lot more senior than I was, and I was a bit of an upstart. And he just raised his eyebrows, and he didn't say anything. He just kept raising his eyebrows, and I kept talking and talking and talking. And he got what he wanted out of the situation without, like you say, saying really anything, just a few gestures. And then I kind of thought, what did I do wrong there? And it was a lesson that I never forgot.
It's incredible, isn't it? Because it really hits home of how little you actually need to do in these situations. Because
people don't want to feel awkward, do they? They always want to avoid.
Yeah, always. So I'm glad you've got that one too.
Definitely. And who would you say has had the biggest impact on your career so far? Is there a kind of procurement leader that has influenced you significantly?
I think I'm pleased to say I've had some really good ones in my time. I've worked in quite a few different areas and organisations, so I'm pleased to say that they've had a really good influence. I think Alan to begin with at Solent Supplies. I think that when you're that early stage of career, I think it's really important to have those influences. I also had a few good managers as well. Neil Routledge, Matthew Owen, they were fantastic at the time, and really kind of, I was pretty young. I mean, like 20 years old, and they were, guiding me along, giving me opportunities, and not holding me back, and let me make my own mistakes, which was good. And I think that set a good influence. And then throughout the years, I mean, I worked at the Office for National Statistics for a while. There was a heck of a character who led that department, a guy called Scott Howe, who, what a guy, tremendous guy, the most hospitable person ever, will do anything for you at any time. And he was just, brilliant, and gave me additional opportunities. I went there to work on the 2011 census, but ended up it was only on a fixed term contract. For like 3.5 years, but still fixed term. He was able to give me other opportunities, knowing that I'd still be leaving, but to enhance my sourcing development, sourcing career at that time. So he was, just absolutely superb. But I don't think I've ever met someone who is in that higher position, higher role, but still would care for anybody or help anybody out, and always dedicate time to anyone. And I think that's important. The further you go up the chain, just still being able to dedicate time. I'm not that high up by any means. I'm not trying to state that at all. But you should always be able to just give a few minutes, a few bits of time to anybody, because it might not mean a huge amount, but to them it could mean a whole lot more. So it's important to share any advice, wisdom at all, because we've all been in that point where we're starting on our careers and are wanting to suck in anything that we absolutely can.
Reds fan, I probably shouldn't say this, but it's the Alex Ferguson treatment, isn't it? They're talking to everybody, no matter what their position in the club or the company, making everybody at the same level and feel the same, because everybody's important and everybody has a role to play.
Yeah, absolutely they do. And then it's all going to be, everyone's going to be able to help each other out at some point, aren't they? So you never know when it may turn around that you need their assistance or something. And I think it's good to respond to people, good to give people the time, good to be approachable as much as possible. And actually I miss that about being in the office, about being able to see people and pop over to people's desks and come over. I feel it's a bit more intrusive just calling someone on Teams or Zoom or whatever. I don't understand why, but I don't know about if you feel like this as well. I feel like I have to, especially internally, I feel like I have to message them first. saying, "Are you free?"
I just feel like you're disrupting somebody's flow, don't you? Whereas if
Yes,
you go over to their desk, you can kind of say, "Oh, you know, if you've got a minute," feels a little bit softer.
but you are definitely interrupting their flow, aren't you? Because because they're clearly not just sat there waiting for people to arrive at their desk.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just feels a little bit more intrusive because you don't know what they're doing at that point. I mean, they could be on their phone. I don't know. They could be downstairs making a coffee or doing anything like that. But I think that's something I'm trying to get a little bit more used to, and also the point of trying to get more people to, I suppose, call me as well.
Naturally, Chris, the landscape of how we work has changed probably quite significantly since you and I started out in our careers. What advice would you give to somebody at the very start of their career looking to go into procurement now?
I'd advise them to go and speak to a few people, to go and get as much information as possible, to try and shape their career. Also, it's that opportunity to sell themselves, because then they can be thought about, because it's getting harder and harder to recruit at the salary benchmarks that we previously had, because the market's changed and is changing daily from what we see. So why not use the opportunity to, rather than spending an extra £15,000-20,000 to bring on board someone who would have been at that lower level before, why not use that to invest in more junior staff, in graduates, in apprenticeship schemes, those kind of elements, to try and bring them into that. So for those people who are approaching that, I'd encourage them to try and reach out to, I mean, LinkedIn's so easy to find out who's who, isn't it? So you can find out who the leads are for all of the local, on the south, procurement, sourcing, services, business sectors that you can go to and reach out to them, because I think they'd always be happy to pass on a little tidbit of advice or something that can go forward. But I think that's the key. Have those initial conversations to start with, rather than just applying for a role. I think if you just apply for a role, you might not be suitable. You don't know what's going on with that. Have that conversation. And I think that's also important. I try and do that with anything that we go through. Although our teams like to go through formal, recruitment, say, right, when we have in the formal interviews, I don't want that yet. I just want to have a 10-minute conversation with someone, find out about them, find out what makes them tick, find out why they're applying for the role, what's going on, thrash out those elements, why they would be suitable or not suitable. So I like to have that conversation first. And so that's what I do. I'd encourage those people to go and reach out to people and have a few conversations. You don't have to know sourcing end to end. You don't have to know EU procurement laws. You don't need to know about supply management or contract management, but if you've got the right soft skills, then someone might give you a chance.
Yeah, just talk to people.
Yeah, just talk to people, because I don't know anyone. It's very rare that you find someone who's left school and going, I want a sourcing job or a procurement job. We, unbelievably, I don't know how this has even happened, we've got someone in our team who did a supply chain degree, which I didn't even know existed. And in fact, and good on them, because they're like probably the most qualified in our team. But most people haven't done that, have they? Most people have done something and just fallen into it and enjoyed business, enjoyed selling or buying. Generally not like selling, because that's why you end up in procurement, because you like to face off against those people, and just like communication, soft skills, and working in an office. And then you end up, you either end up as an accountant or a sourcing person or a recruiter, eh?
As you know, we've recently onboarded Vitality as our healthcare provider, and we love it. We absolutely love it. We're all fairly competitive in the office, so the gamification of fitness goes a long way with us. Going a bit off piste here, do you think that there's a space for gamification in the workplace, and is that something that you've ever tried with your team?
So we talk about the Vitality program quite a lot. Because it's different, it's innovative, it's a good way to have that gamification. And on our email signatures, we say what status we are. So as you get more Vitality points, you work your way up from bronze to silver to gold, and hopefully to platinum at some point, although it is a big challenge. I am platinum, but it has taken a lot of work to get there. I have to get that in there, don't I? And then you hopefully retain it year on year. Now we talk about that, and actually we try and there's lots of, so rather than our specific team, but the organisation as a whole does things to promote that. So there's been runs with execs. So they'll go on a lunchtime run, and our CEO's got involved with that. He's come down to Bournemouth. There's been morning runs, lunchtime runs along the seafront. There's been big gangs, like 50 people. Queues for the showers enormous afterwards. But you know, going out and doing these things, and there's a lot of encouragement to do that. There's also a lot of like a couch to 5Ks and elements like that. Which have been really good in incentivizing the right things. And everyone talks about the partners and rewards all the time. And sometimes we get to do some test runs of those before they actually go live to members. So in terms of living healthier lives, yes, it's all out there. In terms of the gamification, it's an interesting one because we've all got savings targets, as you would in most sourcing organizations. Now we don't put it front and center, but we do talk about it. People know how many they know how much they've delivered this year. Now, clearly, there's a whole host of other objectives. There's the supplier management, segmentations, outputs, contract management, and then there's all the projects that come on board on top. But I think it's for some members of the team, it's just a nice to have, and I think that's where you've got to approach it slightly differently, rather than having leaderboard on the wall behind you and targets and all that. I don't think we'll ever get to that stage, but ring the bell Friday afternoon, when you've hit that target. but I think some people are incentivized by that, and I think you can pick up on that by who's more incentivized by that, and then you put that more into personal objectives rather than the full gamification of it. But I think it's key that we have, rather than gamification, that we have team objectives which flow into personal objectives, which overall will flow into the objectives of the business. So we've got a balanced scorecard, a report on it on a monthly basis, and it kind of brings home why am I doing this again? Right, because it has this influence, it means this, and it adds this value.
Thanks for that, Chris. Chris, what do you like to do in your spare time outside of work?
I cycle too much, as you know.
Yeah, we follow each other on Strava.
We do. I'm a bit obsessive about it. I've got a few bikes. I don't know if it's public knowledge if I've got 5 or 6, but anyway, there's a few, and I do road cycling, and so throughout the winter, training, going on Zwift, which is indoor cycling, turbo training, and then privileged enough to race in the summer. So I ride for a local team, Bournemouth Cycle Works, a great bunch of guys and girls, and we race all around Hampshire, Dorset, Wiltshire, Sussex, and it's brilliant. And I'm not great by any means. I mean, there's a kid on our team who's, I think he's still 17, and he's unbelievable. I mean, like seriously good. And that puts it in perspective when you go out on a Sunday and he turns up at the start at 8:30 and it's cold, and then he just goes from the start, and you're like, yeah, this is going to be, I was looking for a nice casual Sunday ride here, and it doesn't turn into that. But yeah, that's generally what I do. But I'm getting a bit older now. I think I'm into the masters category, as they call it now. So but we do quite a few night trips as well. We're going to Liège, which is in Belgium. So one of the cycling classics is called La Doyenne, but it's the oldest classic. It's a monument. The professionals do it, and so they'll do it. We went to do this in 2020, but obviously it's been delayed twice. So this is end of April. It's 160 miles. You go from Liège to a place called Bastogne in the south, back up to Liège. You do it on the Saturday, and then you watch the professionals do it on the Sunday. Although I'm not sure if I'm even going to be standing on the Sunday. Just be absolutely broken. It's hilly, really hilly. So I think it'll be about 9.5, maybe 10 hours riding. It's pretty much an ultra ride.
I think you'll have earned yourself a few beers by the end of it, Chris, that's for sure.
That's the thing, though. I don't know how. Yeah, I definitely will have done. But how? Yeah, we did.
If you can make it to the pub.
Yeah, we did one. We did one a few years ago in 2019, Paris-Roubaix, which is northern France, across the cobbles, 108 miles. Absolutely broken by the end. Desperate for a beer, and then got halfway through, and like you just can't even do it. But yeah, That's what I like to get up to.
If you could give any advice to your younger self, what would it be and why?
Don't shoot from the hip was one thing that one guy, a senior consultant in ophthalmology in Portsmouth hospitals, accused me of that once, because I went in to speak to him about a big procurement project for a whole load of slit lamps, which when you go get your eyes tested, they're those machines that always look about 40 years old, and it's because they are about 40 years old. And I said, I said he doesn't need to spend this money. They work perfectly. Not understanding the politics of it all, that this guy had been fighting for a business case for years and years and years, had finally got approval, and then some upstart procurement guy turned around and said, you don't need this. So just think about things and think about supporting, and don't shoot from the hip, as it were. I think it's just elements like that. And then I think it's about just taking opportunities when they come along, trying to say yes to things. Don't ever regret anything. Just go and say yes. If someone offers you a chance to do something, say yes. If there's a role that comes up, but you feel kind of obliged that you've only been with a place for a year and you feel that you should be there for 2 years. I mean, there's loyalty, but take the opportunity while you're young, because you'll get to things later on in life where actually you'll be settled and you don't want to move, and you like where you work, and the opportunities might not be there. And even if an opportunity does come down, kids, mortgage, everything like that. And so when you're younger, take as many opportunities as possible.
Good advice. And finally, Chris, tell us an interesting fact about yourself.
An interesting fact. Should you prepared? I once had a disagreement with a Womble. Yeah. Remember? This is a long time ago. Do you remember the Wombles of Wimbledon? I mean, you're too young. I'm just nearly too young. But they're obviously a big thing in whatever decade they're in. I had the privilege of being on the Saturday morning show Live and Kicking. A long time.
Live and Kicking.
You remember? Yeah, good.
Yeah,
you stopped it. They had a football quiz, so I had applied for it and managed to get on, and so I was on this football quiz, and won a couple of rounds, so I got invited back for a few weeks, which so I'm about 14 at the time. So my dad didn't mind doing the first one, and then when it was the second one, he was having to get up at like 4:30 or whatever it was on a Saturday, and the third one, the fourth one, he started to get a bit annoyed about it and was obviously secretly hoping that I'd lose. I was able to take a friend up with me, and in the crowd at the end, they did this like pan shot where you'd have everyone waving and everything like that, and Uncle Bulgaria. I mean, obviously a person in an Uncle Bulgaria costume, I'm not honestly believing Uncle Bulgaria exists, just to be clear, was there in front of us. And he was, enormous. Like absolutely enormous. Yeah. And there was a small girl who was next to us who decided just before they were about to do this final shot to start smacking Bulgaria on the back. Really, really going for him. But obviously, it's taken a while to turn around. So by the time he'd finally turned around, it took him, I don't know, about 10 seconds. Little girl run off. So it's just me and my mate just stood there going, it wasn't us. And he gave us a massive telling off. And so I know, and then turned back round for the shot. So obviously it is on, there's some footage somewhere, but then when the pan shots, we just started going for Bulgaria. And he was not happy at all, but it wasn't us. So we had a bit of a ruckus with Bulgaria, however many years ago that was.
Well, great.
There you go.
On that bombshell. No, thank you very much for your time today, Chris. It's been really good to get to know you better, and we'll catch up afterwards.